I cannot believe that I have ended up here. I promised you a rant video if international management was announced as not being in FM26. I never believed that that would actually come to pass. I cannot wrap my mind around the fact that it has. Not to mention the way that we found that out, which is insane, like beyond insane. Makes absolutely no sense to me, but I'm going to restrain myself for the moment because we're going to start this video with a few caveats. The first of which is the people that make this game, I know. Personally, I have met them. At the very least, I know their faces, have shook their hands. I toured the studio, which was an amazing, very cool experience. But as a result, I am sitting here criticizing people that I know. That's always going to change the way it happens a little bit. It's also important to remember that they are people. And while you can go at them for what they do and what they make in the game, don't actually go at them as human beings, right? Because they're clocking in and going home the same way as everybody else is. So don't turn this into a personal thing. We got to make sure, I say we, but really me in this video, got to make sure that we're focused on criticizing what we are here to criticize and not going after anything outside that realm. If you do, you've stepped over the line, right? The second caveat is that international management could be brought into the game at some point. I don't know, January. They do an update in March. That would be right before the World Cup. Maybe they'll try and stick it in there. Maybe they got a bunch of new licenses. Maybe they're even going to get a license for the World Cup, and it's going to be a huge thing arriving in March. But I don't think that matters, and we're going to talk about that in a second. I'm just going to throw that it is a possibility that it's coming in it's not going to be in the game at the start, and then they're going to do this giant unveiling of what should have been there the entire time. I'm stepping back. We'll get there. And the third caveat, the stated reason that international management is not in the game, I agree with. And the reason given by Miles Jacobson, the head of the studio, is... Here, let me find it. The user response was not good to international management, and the level of completion was judged to be insufficient, so we excluded it for the time being. We plan to spend sufficient time to properly recreate it. Later, he's asked about it again, and we will come back to this article. There's a big market for the World Cup, but I thought it was more important to improve the game's quality. The user response is, it wasn't very fun. Laughs. It wasn't very fun. That's true. International management for years has been broken as hell in Football Manager. The fatigue system was all wrong. You couldn't train anybody. It wasn't intuitive, right? It was terrible. And it had existed in a terrible state for a long time. Whose fault is that? Whose fault is that? It's not Ten Hag's. You can blame him for everything else. You can't blame him for this one. Okay, you didn't fix it for a super long time. And I get that the point is that we're starting a new game here, right? It's Football Manager 2.0, right? That's the transition to the new engine. And you want to make sure that international management is perfect. Well, I don't know if you check the calendar, but this is Football Manager 26. We are going into a World Cup year. And just in case you are wondering, the biggest recurring event in human history, the World Cup, gets more eyeballs than any other recurring event in the history of humanity, happens to be in the sport in which you are making a game about. Yes, it's been in a terrible state for a long time, and yes, it should be fixed, and yes, if it's not good enough, it shouldn't be in the game, but it should be good enough. It should be good enough right now. You added 300 million things to this game. You completely redid the UI. You changed the tactics. You changed the lighting. You changed the damn trees in the background. Somewhere on the list of priorities, somewhere on that list should have been international management, and it probably should have been above a lot of those things. This is an issue with prioritization. It's the same thing that sunk FM25, right? In prioritizing the things that need to get done first. And let's be honest, international management in a World Cup year, can you imagine, just for a second, right? And I know that EAFC has 1,000,001 problems. A lot of games do. EAFC obviously has maybe more than a lot of games. Can you imagine for a second what would happen in a World Cup year, or just how bad it would be if the game came out and instead of adding a World Cup mode, the closer you get to the World Cup with a live update or something, they just released the game with no national teams. Sorry, the national team section of the game wasn't up to standard. We didn't really like it. Didn't make a lot of sense. There's just a bunch of Bulgarians in the free agency for people to sign in career mode, and we decided to redesign it. Now we've decided to pull it. It's going to be redesigned. We decided not to prioritize that going into a World Cup year, and instead have decided to pull out a shotgun and blow off our entire foot by just not having it in the game at all. Because that's what it feels like. I mean, look, I get that international management the year after a World Cup doesn't matter as much. I mean, I obviously still still love it. It's still important. And oh, by the way, you're adding women's football to the game. What is the most important part? Like men's football, the World Cup is still the biggest event. Champions League is obviously huge, right? The Club World Cup. No, I'm just kidding. I got you, FIFA. Gianni got really excited when I said that. No, in women's football, the World Cup is magnitudes more important for the popularity of the sport than in men's. Magnitudes. The most watched, you can look this up, the most watched match ever, men and women in the United States, USA against Japan, women's World Cup final. The most watched match ever in the US. That's just in the US. I mean, other countries like Spain have gotten on the train. England, it came home. And you're going to add women to the game and yank international. I mean, it's just like that alone is a crime of making this game. It's a crime. Then you add in the whole World Cup year thing that I've been ranting about up to this point, and it's just, can you understand why this is unbelievable? They had an extra year in the development update that they announced that they were removing certain features from FM25 back when they still somehow believed they were going to get that game out, even though it was apparently in such a bad state that the moment Miles played it, he went, bah, darn it, fumbled that one, which credit to them for admitting it and canceling the game, right? That's a winning decision. It's losing decisions that lead up to that are the problem. But in this statement, international management's being removed from FM25. Of course, they said that it would be back. Will return in a much more feature-rich way in FM26. Obviously, this was before the game was canceled, like I said, so those plans have changed. Nobody let us know. Not that, informing us of this just baffling breaking news is close to the most important thing. The most important thing is whether it's in the game or not and whether it's good or not, right? Those are the things that matter the most. But it is kind of hilarious and wild that something as important as international management to both the women's game and to the World Cup that's happening this year is announced as not being in the game in something that, by the way, this interview we were reading is in Korean from the Tokyo Game Show. Like, I got nothing against Korea. Shout out to my Korean brothers and sisters in the Football Manager universe. It's honestly one of the best Football Manager communities out there. But if you're going to announce this sort of thing, don't bury it in an interview in one language that most of your fan base does not understand and has to Google Translate with Chrome up here in order to be able to read. At least announce it in multiple languages. Put out some sort of explanation. I mean, I guess this is their bespoke way of making announcements now, is doing interviews. I can't wait for the Hindi interview next month where they announce that Schouts are never going to be back in the game. And oh, by the way, we got rid of Raumdeuters because Thomas Muller left the Bundesliga. But you got to find that on the Hindustan Times. Like, it's just, I'm short-circuiting. It's baffling. I don't get it. The core issue is that international management is incredibly important to the world of football, particularly now, particularly with women being added to the game, all of this, and that it should have been a higher priority to get it ready to go into this game. You add an extra year, it's not like, this isn't a tornado. A World Cup is not a jump scare. Women being in the game, you've been planning for like 6 years. You've been bragging about it for 3, which fine, it's a huge deal. And they've done a lot of good things in adding women to the game. There's over 40,000 new people in the game. They got a whole new set of animations. Gee whiz, Batman, we couldn't have broke somebody off from that to work on international football to help the women's game. Hire some more people, put them on the women's side. Put the international game on the women's side, at least. Solve a quarter of your problem here. But no, it wasn't prioritized. And we are entering into Football Manager 2.0 without a significant portion of the football ecosystem even there. It's not even, you can't play it. And it's a World Cup year. It's a World Cup year. Even if they parachute in March with a World Cup update, it is impossible to view this entire thing as anything other than a failure of the studio to be able to deliver what should be a core aspect of the game. Even if it's not a core aspect of the game every year, a core aspect of the sport this year. Because yeah, the World Cup isn't till next summer, which by the way, is not nearly as far away as it feels. But the lead up to the World Cup and the group stage draw and the end of qualifying, that's going to be incredibly dramatic. I mean, just today, the day I'm recording this video, Libya and Cape Verde played the wildest 3-3 draw you've ever seen with World Cup qualification on the line. And Miles Jacobson leads the charge, right, of the entire studio that is built on replicating the real-life managerial experience. Well, one of the most special parts of that real-life managerial experience isn't interacting with your players after they've had a bad training session. It's leading your country to the World Cup. Whether you're from Libya or Cape Verde or the US or England or wherever. Coaching your national team, watching your players get called, right? Like the whole national team process is one of the core managerial experiences in the game. It now doesn't exist at a time where it has to exist. If you are making a game about a sport and the biggest event, the most watched event in that sport is happening that year, and you don't include that event in it, not for a legal reason, just for because of a prioritizing reason. There was a word in there that I couldn't find, but you get it. I don't understand that. I genuinely don't understand. I'm baffled, and as much as I've been in a long time, my feathers are ruffled. I'm like legitimately upset that I won't be able to coach the U.S. women's national team because finally the U.S. sucks on the men's side. I hope we do well at the World Cup, but we did just get grouped by Panama at Copa America, so the hopes aren't super high. But you know where I finally get to watch the U.S. be good? The women. That's the one time I get to chant defense, and it actually works, with the exception of Tim Howard against Belgium. The chant worked, and it worked. And I think maybe most telling of all, this is a serious sign that even though they had another year to make this game, it is still not to the point that they want it to be at. And that is scary. Football Manager decided that they were going to switch to Unity going into 2025. They chose the date. They were working on it in the background for years, and they said, this is the year, and then tripped over it. And they gave themselves an extra year, and it still ain't ready. Remember, this announcement was in September of 2024, which means kind of before this, at least to a certain extent, they were planning on including international management, and then they excluded it because they were running out of time. And there was a part of me that is worried that Miles is now in this interview in their bespoke way letting us know that international management's not going to be in there. It's a longer interview that covers some of the same topics he's talked about in the other interviews and so on and so forth, right? Saying that international management's not in the game. It doesn't go into the same detail as the dev update, but isn't this deja vu all over again? We're releasing a game that there are features that you really were in the game before and bad, and you're saying we're upgrading the game and now not all of those features can go back in. Like, I logically understand the thought process of doing that, but if you're going to make this giant leap and brand it as a giant leap, I just don't think it makes sense to do that if you're missing such a big, important part of what makes being a football manager special and important this year, particularly. And the game is called Football Manager, after all.